Everything was going well in my life with Sarah. We had our routines, me coming home from work, making dinner together, watching shows until we fell asleep on the couch. It was simple, and it was good, but something shifted. It was a Tuesday evening. When I first noticed it, Sarah was in the living room, tapping away on her phone, like she always did when she had some downtime. But this time, her phone was never far from her. I used to leave my phone around the house without thinking, but hers was always in her hand. I couldn't help but notice how she kept glancing at the screen and quickly pulling it away when I walked by. I shrugged it off at first. Maybe she was just busy, right? Maybe work had been hectic, or she was just catching up with a friend. I convinced myself that it was nothing. But then, when we were eating dinner, she went silent for a few minutes, just staring at the screen. I asked her, "What's going on? You seem ... distracted." She didn't even look up, her fingers scrolling without pause. "Oh, nothing. Just an email." I studied her face. It was subtle, but I could see something was off. The way her eyebrows furrowed and how her lips stayed in a tight line. I didn't press it. I didn't want to be the guy who overthought everything. But something felt wrong, like a knot tightening in my stomach. That night, after she went to bed, I found her phone. On the couch, it was unlocked. She never left it like that. My curiosity got the best of me. I shouldn't have done it, but I checked. There it was, right on the screen, 5 friend requests from her ex. 5 of them. The notifications were clear. She had rejected them all. I leaned back against the couch, staring at the phone in my hand. My heart started pounding, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a cold pit in my stomach. What did this mean? Why would she reject them so many times, only for him to keep trying? I tried to push the thought away. Maybe it meant nothing. Maybe it was nothing. When Sarah came out of the shower, I couldn't keep it in anymore. I had to ask. I had to know what was going on. "Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I saw the requests from your ex. Why didn't you tell me about it?" She froze for a moment, her eyes darting away. She wiped her face with a towel, and then muttered, "It's no big deal. He's just trying to catch up. I rejected him. Nothing to worry about." I didn't believe her. Something in the way she said it didn't sit right, but I didn't push. Not yet. I gave her a half-hearted smile, forcing the unease back down. "Okay, just ... be careful, all right?" She nodded and disappeared into the bedroom. Couldn't shake the feeling that things weren't as simple as she made them out to be. The knot in my stomach remained, and the more I thought about it, the more questions I had. Why was she avoiding me? Why was she hiding her phone? And why did her ex still have a place in her life at all? This wasn't just about a friend request. Anymore, I could feel that something had shifted between us, and I wasn't sure if I could fix it. The next few days felt different. The air between Sarah and me was thicker, charged with something I couldn't quite put my finger on. She was still sweet, still kind, but there was this distance. I could feel it in the way she avoided eye contact during dinner, or the way she stayed on her phone even longer than usual. I couldn't stop thinking about the friend requests. I kept telling myself that I was overreacting, that it wasn't a big deal. But the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. I needed to talk to her. Again, to hear it from her, to make sure she wasn't hiding anything. One evening, after we finished dinner, I finally decided to confront her. I took a deep breath and turned to her, trying to keep my voice calm, steady. "Sarah," I began, "I've been thinking about what happened the other night, about the requests from your ex." She looked up from her phone, her fingers pausing. She didn't seem surprised, which made me feel even more uneasy. "I already told you." "It's nothing," she replied, a little too quickly. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and there was a slight tension in her voice. "You told me you rejected them," I pressed. "But why didn't you just tell me in the first place? Why keep it from me?" She sighed, setting her phone down. "I didn't want to worry you. It's no big deal, really. He's just..." She stopped herself, clearly choosing her words carefully. "He's just trying to get in touch, nothing more." I couldn't help but feel that she was lying, or at least omitting something important. I wasn't stupid. The way she shifted in her seat, the way she avoided looking at MIT, all felt off. "I'm not an idiot, Sarah," I said, my voice a little sharper than I intended. "You could have told me about it instead of hiding it." Her eyes widened, and she leaned back in her chair. "I'm not hiding anything, okay? You're blowing this way out of proportion." I could feel the frustration bubbling up inside me. Then why does it feel like you're shutting me out? She stood up quickly, pushing her chair back with a loud scrape. I'm not shutting you out. Her voice was defensive, but her posture was stiff, like she was ready to flee. I stood up, too, my hands clenching into fists. Then what the hell is going on, Sarah? She froze, her back to me. For a moment, I thought she might break down, but instead, she turned around and faced me, her expression cold. I'm done talking about this. Before I could respond, she grabbed her phone off the table and walked away, disappearing into the bedroom. The door slammed behind her, and I stood there, feeling a mix of confusion and anger that twisted inside me. This wasn't just about a friend request anymore. Something was happening, something I couldn't control, and the more I tried to grasp at the truth, the further it slipped from my fingers. It was a few days after our argument, and everything felt wrong. Sarah still acted like nothing had changed, but I could see the cracks in her behavior. She was distant, lost in her own world, and it seemed like every time I tried to talk to her, she would shut me down or brush me off. I wasn't an idiot, could feel her pulling away. One evening, I came home early from work, hoping to surprise her. I had a small bouquet of flowers in my hand, planning to remind her how much she meant to me. But when I opened the door, the scene I walked into made my heart drop. Sarah was sitting on the couch, her back to me. But what hit me hardest wasn't just the way she was sitting, it was the phone in her hand. She was texting someone, furiously, tapping on the screen. The way her face tightened with every word, the quick glances she gave over her shoulder, made something inside me snap. I cleared my throat, trying to make my presence known, but she didn't even flinch. Sarah, I said softly, holding up the flowers. I thought we could spend some time together. She turned, and I saw the flash of guilt in her eyes, quickly masked by a fake smile. Oh, hey, she said, her voice forced. I didn't know you'd be home so early. I set the flowers on the table, but my eyes kept flicking to her phone. It didn't make sense to me. Who's that you're texting? Her face turned red, her fingers halting mid-text. It's nothing really, just ... some work stuff. I didn't buy it. Work stuff. At this hour, she hesitated, biting her lip. Yeah, well, you know how it is. Lots to catch up on. Something inside me broke. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. Sarah, you're lying to me. Again. She snapped her phone shut, her face now a mixture of frustration and something else, fear. Maybe. I'm not lying. You're just being paranoid. I felt my chest tighten. Why do you keep shutting me out? Why are you hiding this from me? I'm not hiding anything. She shot back, standing up quickly. You're just ... You're being ridiculous. I don't know what you want me to say. The anger, the hurt, it all came pouring out of me. I want you to stop lying. I want you to tell me the truth. Sarah, who is it? Who are you talking to? She stepped back, her face hardening. It's none of your business anymore. I stared at her, completely stunned. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding. What do you mean, none of my business? We're married, Sarah. We're supposed to be a team. Not anymore, she whispered, almost too quietly for me to hear. The words hit me like a slap across the face. What? She turned away, grabbing her phone from the table and walking toward the door. I'm done, all right, I'm done with all this. I can't keep pretending. Pretending? I asked, my voice rising. What the hell are you talking about? But she didn't answer. She just walked out, leaving me standing there, the bouquet of flowers still in my hand, my world crashing down around me. It hit me all at once. She was leaving, not just physically, but emotionally. I had known something was wrong, but now the truth was inescapable. This was it, the final straw. I wasn't sure what hurt more, her betrayal or the fact that she didn't even care enough to fight for us. The silence that followed her departure was deafening. I stood there for what felt like hours, the bouquet of flowers still in my hands, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. My mind raced, but no matter how hard I tried to think, I kept circling back to the same question. What now? I knew I couldn't chase her down. She had made it clear that she was done. But as much as my heart screamed at me to go after her, a small part of me knew that I couldn't fix this. Not anymore. The trust, the love, it had all been shattered beyond repair. The next day, I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling. Every corner of the apartment felt unfamiliar, like I was living in a stranger's home. I couldn't focus on anything, no work, no food, nothing. I was numb. The thoughts came in waves, drowning me. Had I not been enough for her? What had gone wrong? Why didn't she love me the way I loved her? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. But there was also this deep sadness that lingered, creeping into my bones. Sarah had been my everything. I had loved her with all my heart, but now she was just gone. I reached for my phone, my hands trembling as I scrolled through our old messages. Every text, every picture, every memory, it was all just a lie now. I couldn't help but wonder how much of it had been real, how much of our love had been genuine, and how much of it had been a carefully constructed illusion. I had two choices. I could either let the anger take control and try to get revenge, or I could walk away and begin to heal. Neither option felt good. Revenge seemed pointless now. It wouldn't change anything. And healing, that seemed impossible. But deep down, I knew what I had to do. I had to let go. As hard as it was to accept, this was the end. The damage had already been done, and no amount of pleading or fighting would fix it. I sent Sarah a message, one final message. I told her I wouldn't chase her anymore, that if she wanted to leave, she could, but that I was done with the lies. Hit send, not expecting a reply, but it didn't matter anymore. I was already making my peace with it. The next few weeks were like a blur. My life felt like it was in freefall, spiraling out of control with every passing day. I tried to fill the emptiness with distractions, work, the gym, late night, Netflix binges, but nothing helped. Every corner I turned, every silence I tried to fill, reminded me of Sarah. I hadn't realized just how much of my world had revolved around her until she was gone. I stopped checking my phone for her messages, stopped waiting for a call that I knew would never come. But even with all the distractions, there was a growing sense of abandonment that I couldn't shake. It was like a dull ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. Then one day, I ran into her at the coffee shop near my office. It had been weeks since I last saw her, and I thought I was ready, that I had moved on enough not to feel the sting of seeing her again. But when I saw her standing there, laughing with a guy I didn't recognize, my heart dropped. I stood frozen. For a moment, watching them. She looked so happy, her face glowing with a smile I hadn't seen in weeks. And the guy, he was leaning in, talking to her with an intimacy that felt too familiar, too comfortable. I could hear snippets of their conversation. It was casual, easy. And for a brief moment, I thought maybe she hadn't just left me, maybe she had already moved on. It hit me harder than I expected. I didn't even want to approach her, to say something, anything. I couldn't, not like this. Instead, I turned away, walking out of the cafe without a word. I don't know why I was surprised. Deep down, I had known that this would happen. She had already checked out emotionally long before the final argument. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. As the days went by, I started to hear things through mutual friends. Sarah's ex had been in the picture for a while, now probably, even before our split. They hadn't just been catching up, like she'd said. They'd been talking behind my back, planning this all along. The betrayal hit me again, sharp and cold. She hadn't just rejected me. She had already moved on to him. I felt like a fool. For all the nights I'd waited for her to come back, she'd already been out the door, hand in hand with someone else. I met up with Alex, my old friend, to vent. "Man, you need to forget about her," he said, slapping me on the back. "She's not worth it. She's already moved on, and you need to do the same." I knew he was right, but that didn't make it any easier. The anger and sadness I felt were overwhelming, and even though I wanted to move on, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. "I don't know if I can just forget her, Alex," I admitted, my voice raw. "It's not that simple." But Alex was right about one thing: Sarah was no longer a part of my life. The reality was setting in. She had chosen him, and I had to start making the hard choice to let go. I thought I was ready to let go of the past, but every time I tried to move forward, something pulled me back. It wasn't even anger at first, it was more like an empty space where my heart used to be. The betrayal stung, but I couldn't change it. I couldn't bring her back. But then, a few weeks later, I got a message, not from Sarah, but from one of my old co-workers, Jason. He'd been friends with both Sarah and me back when things were normal, before everything fell apart. He sent a short text. "Man, I heard what happened with Sarah and her ex. You might want to hear this." I felt a strange rush of curiosity, mixed with dread. What was he talking about? I didn't respond right away, but my mind couldn't stop racing. Jason's next message came in a few hours later, with a link to an article. "I don't know if you've seen this, but her ex is kind of a piece of work. I clicked on the link, and as the page loaded, I could feel my pulse quickening. The article was about Sarah's ex, Mark, someone I'd thought was just a guy from her past, nothing more. But now, it seemed like there was more to the story. According to the article, Mark had been involved in some shady business dealings, and worse, he'd been seeing another woman during the entire time he was reconnecting with Sarah. I sat there, stunned. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a full-on double betrayal. Sarah had been deceived, just as I had. The man she'd left me for had been playing both of us. I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of justice, as if karma was coming full circle. She'd fallen for someone who was just as bad as she had been to me. I felt no joy in it, no satisfaction. It wasn't about getting revenge anymore, it was about the realization that Sarah had been the one who'd been hurt too, just in a different way. But what really stung was that she still hadn't reached out to me. She hadn't tried to apologize, or even explain herself. She had let herself get caught up in his lies, and now, like me, she was left to pick up the pieces. I didn't feel better, though. The hurt didn't go away. Instead, it just twisted into a quiet kind of relief. She wasn't the only one who'd been hurt by this. The news made its rounds, and slowly, I began hearing more about Mark's shady past stories of manipulation, dishonesty, and betrayal. People started pulling away from him, even Sarah's friends, and with each piece of information I learned, the more I realized that this wasn't just about Sarah anymore. It was about both of us being caught in a web of lies, and neither of us was going to escape unscathed. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't heartbroken. I just felt empty. I had been a fool for trusting her, but she had been just as blind to his true nature as I had been to hers. The weeks dragged on, but slowly, I began to breathe again. The weight that had crushed my chest was lifting, piece by piece. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but I could feel myself changing. The anger and resentment that had been all-consuming were fading into the background, replaced by a quiet acceptance. I had my moments, of course. Moments when I'd remember Sarah's smile, or the sound of her laughter echoing in our apartment. There were times when the loneliness felt unbearable, but each time I fell back into those old memories. I had to remind myself why I had to let go. It wasn't just about what she did to MIT, it was about reclaiming my life. One night, as I sat alone in my apartment, I found myself scrolling through old photos of us vacations, birthdays, random snapshots from nights spent together. The love we'd shared felt so real, and yet so distant now. It was almost like I was looking at someone else's life. I didn't recognize myself in those pictures anymore. I put the phone down and stared at the ceiling. The apartment felt quieter now, more mine. It didn't feel like the place where my heart had been shattered. I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but it was the truth. That's when I realized something. I had been holding on to Sarah, holding on to the past, trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. And for what? So I could feel hurt again. So I could keep going over the same arguments, the same broken promises. No, it was time to stop. I started putting myself first. I made time for the things I had neglected: friends, my job, my hobbies. I went out to dinners with Alex, took weekend trips, and even started training for a half marathon. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was doing things for me. Then, something unexpected happened. I ran into Sarah one afternoon. I hadn't seen her in a while, and honestly, I wasn't sure how I would feel when I did. But when she saw me, her expression faltered for a moment, like she was unsure how to react. "Hey," she said, her voice soft. "How have you been?" For a second, I didn't know how to respond. I could feel all the old emotions bubbling up and hurt, sadness, but I kept them down. I couldn't go back to that place, not anymore. "I'm good," I said, and I meant it. I had spent so much time waiting for her, for something from her, but in that moment, I realized that I didn't need her approval, her explanation, or her apology to move on. She looked at me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. "I'm sorry, for everything." I nodded, but I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. I had already forgiven her in my own way, and now it was time for me to keep moving forward. "Well," I said, offering a small, almost sad smile, "take care of yourself, Sarah." And with that, I walked away. It wasn't an act of revenge. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was just about me finally letting go. Time passed, and with each day, I found myself becoming more and more comfortable in my own skin. There was no rush anymore. No need to force anything. The hole that Sarah had left in my life began to fill with new things, new experiences, new people, new dreams. I had learned to be by myself, and that was something I never thought I'd be able to do. It wasn't about replacing what I'd lost. It was about understanding that my worth wasn't tied to someone else's actions or decisions. I had spent so much time trying to fix something broken that I hadn't realized I was already whole. Then, one evening, as I walked home from work, I bumped into Alex at a bar we used to frequent together. He waved me over, grinning like he knew something I didn't. "Man, it's good to see you like this," he said, raising his drink. "You've come a long way." I chuckled, feeling the weight of his words. "Yeah, I guess I have." We spent the night talking about everything, old times, new times, and everything in between. I wasn't thinking about Sarah anymore. I wasn't even thinking about the past. I was focused on the present, on the life I was rebuilding, and it felt good. As I left the bar later that night, I noticed a couple walking down the street, holding hands, laughing, carefree. It reminded me of Sarah and me at one time, when everything felt simple. But now, as I watched them, I didn't feel any bitterness, no jealousy, just a strange sense of peace. I had let go, and it felt freeing. The next morning, I woke up early, like I always did now, and for the first time in a long while, I felt no pain, just a quiet acceptance of where I was, and where I was going. I didn't know what the future held, but for once, that uncertainty didn't scare me. It felt like an adventure, one I was ready to take on, alone or with someone new. As I walked out the door to start my day, I realized that sometimes it takes losing everything to finally find yourself, and I had